Hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream. Welcome back. If you joined any other streams before, we're going to start quite slow. And as always, I'm going to check how you are doing, as well as give me a thumbs up, a message if you can see me fine, if you can hear me fine. That certainly helps, so we can get the technicalities out of the way and jump into the good stuff, into the interesting stuff. I think as we just warm up, I think more people gonna join in. I can see already a few are clocking in. All good, all right? Good morning from NJ. I see Cosmos Beta, Harsh. Awesome. All right, so I think the quality is good enough for us to get started. Yeah, New Jersey. Sorry, my brain blanked for a sec. I was trying to keep up with all the different names, and with the messages which come into the with a comment box, you never know what's gonna pop up. So it's quite hard to catch up. Sometimes you kind of need to think a bit slower for a sec before you kind of start to process it. But these are the things, really unexpected stuff. Cool. We have a few people on the stream, so I'm going to get started. And today, welcome aboard, everyone. But we're going to discuss about the shifting design roles. And in particular, it's a continuation from a previous stream, which I had done, I think now a few weeks ago, and we discussed the vanishing designer. I'm not sharing the right screen. The Vanishing Designer. And that was the article which really, it was taken in a lot of different lights, and a lot of people kind of looked at it and had some add-ons to it. It highlighted a lot of problems with the design field. And of course, given, this exploratory nature, I was covering a lot of different themes and gave new principles which I think anyone could take on and then basically make better decisions in their design careers and progress and kind of develop. And those principles were also very high level, very simple, but it was be the change, drive the change, manage the change, put the users first. Doesn't have to be said. Start earlier. This is a big one because a lot of the designers who start, they are by neglect from the organization or the product team, they get involved quite late in the actual journey. So your aim always should be to get involved as soon as possible. When you become more strategic, you're having those discussions where decisions are being made instead of being like a maker, which gonna be a good segue into the stuff I'm gonna discuss today about those roles. Then decoupling art from design is super important, and I think again, a good segue too, because a lot of the people who love the detail, they don't fear the title of being, pixel pushers, working with the squares, the forklift drivers of Figma, pushing different palettes of different boxes in different ways and layouts. They sometimes get bogged down with the detail and the love for the craft instead of love for user experiences. In the end, it's almost like a loving the actual making of the things, which everybody's guilty in different ways. I'm guilty in, other ways and things of that nature. But I think de-romanticizing the job, de-articizing the actual job or design kind of helps. Of course, you don't have to lose the creativity and go crazy and dry yourself out of all those different creative ideas, but you get my point. Then prioritizing divergence, which means ideas, people, influx of a lot of different signals, learnings and things of that nature. If your job is to design UI today, you really want to strive to have other signals coming into your head, which is new ideas, new learnings, new methods, new frameworks, new people ultimately who can coach and guide you and so forth, so that you become better. Like by definition, if you want create new ideas, you have to have an influx, a bucket of a stream of too many ideas, so you can pick and choose what makes up and combine them, and that's where you produce meaningful design innovation. And then, of course, standing up for something and managing up is very important. It's pushing back, it's being rightful, it's obviously being political enough, but fighting the good fight ultimately. If you want to be doing something like user-centered design at its best with a really high quality user research, you know, de-risking the things, adding more certainty to the projects and things of that nature. You need to be that change. You need to stand up. You need to basically manage up, and then creating better frameworks as well, which is a no-brainer. I spent a lot of time in the previous stream covering this, but a lot of the people are complaining about design thinking, design sprints, that or this doesn't work. And my take is always that they all have their own application and they're great for certain problems, or maybe in a certain scenarios, or maybe you need to change your ways of how you adopt those things in the people's you know, lives, which they might have no appreciation for these type of things, but also creating better frameworks. Anyhow, that I got that out of the way, I'm going to say hello to people who just dropped in. I see Michelle, Kevin, Abdullah, KDH70, sounds interesting, Jack Earl, Adriana. Okay, all the people I caught up with in the end, in the beginning as well, sorry. Now, today's topic, though, is the morphing roles, and I'm going to give you my thinking behind all the different changes to come and why it's happening as well. And for that, what helps always is to cover a bit of history. And history in terms of how we had those roles. You've probably seen already that there is a rise in IC roles, there is a decline in management roles, and this is almost like that post-layoffs symptom of sorts, where, you know, we went through a lot of market turmoil. We actually hired a lot of people in UX during the pandemic, because a lot of that customer behavior has changed and a lot of demand increased for digital services and, you know, a lot of different things. And it looked like it never would change back. But of course, as environment changes, the customer behavior changes, the demand for UX and every other specialty changed too. And therefore the layoffs happened, and they're still happening, or at least I think now we're at its lowest. Hopefully there's not going to be any more kind of like a drop down. So I think companies realize that we need to start hiring up. But as that hiring is taking place, more attention is being kind of taken into the IC roles and the makers and the doers, because that's what's needed. Imagine if you chop down your workforce from, I don't know, 10 UXers to just 8 or 7, chances are those remaining bits, you might, you know, you never that precise or surgical enough where you're going to be optimizing it evenly to maintain it in the long term. And therefore now people realize we need more makers, we need more doers. A lot of the people in management roles also got trimmed away, you know, with all those different layoffs, but it's not as big of a demand. And I know some of the, you know, heads of senior managers, leaders in UX are quite depressed or quite negative about it, because, you know, the sentiment is just shared that there is not that many openings. And I can attest to that. Looking at the openings this year versus last year or year before, it's just a downtrend basically. But the IC roles, especially principal roles, have been on the, you know, uptick, because people need very, very senior people who can do it all. And that to me also is a signal of the things bettering. You know, it might seem like, oh, we're just going to be then all makers and ICs, and it's just going to need more seniors and principals, and no managers could kind of scale the teams and maturity could drop and stuff like that. But that to me is not the case. That to me is just means that the market is falling, and then we're going to recover, because the immediate people you might need are the ones who are going to take up those dead projects and frozen projects and projects which might not had that much attention, and we're going to create waves and obviously need to hire more people as they give better examples. I can see Michelle saying, yep, got chunked from my contract doing some level of management, and my gov job did reorg, survive that, but stayed in IC. Yeah, because someone has to basically, and especially if you're senior enough, you're going to be trusted to maintain a lot of things. And if you've been with a company for some time and you looked at a lot of bit, chances are you can maintain a lot of projects, or you know what's happening basically. And as such, it's also one of the good tips, probably flipping you know, around it and kind of looking in between the lines, that it's the seniority counts, the actual tenure in years and things of that nature do count, so you can kind of stay a bit safer. But anyways, that I just wanted to preface that as an intro. I think the principal roles and senior roles are still going to be in high demand, and they are, at least in Europe. I think it kind of like permeates everywhere, really. But the roles itself might be morphing. And this is more of like a philosophical view, because maybe you've seen on Twitter, I'm just going to show you this tweet, which I found back in the day, and I saved it because I thought it would be very good transitionary type of illustration to kind of warm you up. But people basically are saying that things like design engineering is going to, grow even further. It has been already growing slowly because companies and design organizations needed to invest in the design systems. You kind of need to assure the quality. With the likes of Figma further developing their features, the blurring lines between front-end engineering, design systems designers or managers, and the actual UXers prototyping are blurring. They're just basically becoming closer and closer. And if you want to know my thoughts, I think the specifically prototyping or development organizations which have UX and product design and design systems and front-end engineering at the minimum close together, or even managed in the same kind of area, let's say, or organization, perform much better. And that's what has been happening in a lot of startups, the well-performing tech houses, where, let's say, engineering divisions and product divisions are having these blurred lines and dotted lines, and they come together to form these better UX organizations. So as such, design engineer, I think, is going to persist, but I'm going to tell you exactly why. Let's talk about a bit of, history of what happened to the role so far. So if you walk back long enough, we had this UX UI world where there are two different hats the people in UX wore, or majority of people. You could argue, but there were also information architects, or there was this researcher, or this human factors engineer, or something like along those lines. It doesn't matter. Like if you just kind of pull those things, it's still going to be someone who was a GUI or graphical user interface designer or UI designer, and someone who was doing more hardcore UX. And those, if you ask, let's say, if you watch my podcast with Cal Thompson from, she's a VP or VP of UX at Headspace, they're saying that those lost kind of like capabilities or skill sets between UI design and UX design are kind of blurred and disappeared, and that actually kind of hinders us as someone who works on user experiences and shapes user experiences, because you can no longer, I guess, be generalist but also specialize in a certain areas. And I had to agree with them, because I think where we have super crafty, or someone who's like a person who would look into the detail and the actual UI design, plus someone who's more strategic from the user needs perspective, or can do more research or architect things better, forms this duo of unstoppable force. And the teams I managed and worked in as an IC back in the day, who had those two, at least, on paper we might have been both UX designers or UX UI designers, but had certain strengths. And if they would two come together, like the projects would just glow. But that to me, what was happening back in the day, where you had UI designer, UX designer, and then they were accompanied by a project manager, let's say. PM role is very recent occurrence and new developments, and the business analyst as well, which was typical back in the day. And of course, engineers, which don't really change much. And in between that and what we have today, we had this UX world, the golden age, the gold rush of UX, so to speak, where we were basically on this surfing this never stopping wave of, lucrative roles, growing demand for UX, and a lot of space to still challenge the business perspectives and people who don't know what UX is about. It never was easy, but still there was a lot more roles, a lot more demand, even if the roles themselves didn't really, or hiring managers themselves didn't really know what they were looking for or what UX was about. And if we skip to now, the quote-unquote post-UX world is we have product designer, which really a lot of the people who were specializing in UI design, in UX design kind of went into product design. There is still some UX design, which is do it all basically, or it depends which company you're part of. They're skinned differently. Sometimes if you take like Google openings, they're all saying UX design, even if let's say some people there do research or product design, it's still like a one big role. Some startups are going to split research and product design and so forth. It varies massively, but you still have that kind of like a majority of people dropping in these buckets. And of course, user researcher, which has been booming. The demand for it in UX type of capabilities have been booming, and it's going to grow further, I think, for a while. And just because a lot of the PMs, the product managers, are learning to wireframe or learning to UX. And you probably notice that a lot of them have this requirement that, you know, you should be, you should have a good grasp of UX to do product management. Even I saw the roles for technical product management, the backend product or AI product management. And it stated that you have to have a fundamental UX understanding. And as such, you know, you kind of like this UX designer then becomes a hybrid. Of course, product managers do much more, but just so you understand why, like why the shift is happening is because a lot of the activities are being shared. And this is an important principle, which I want to highlight, that none of the people, none of the roles, none of the disciplines are being truly automated or will be ever truly automated. It's just that the type of work, the jobs are going to remain. It's just the tasks, the activities, the tools are going to change, how we perform those jobs. And that's borrowing almost that jobs to be done framework, which you should know about anyways. But it's, you know, it's understanding who is doing what and why, and then basically shifting the methods of how we are doing those things in order to improve users' life, let's say. So if we take the meta perspective, us doing UX, you know, it's still going to remain. It's just those roles going to shift. If you kind of go back a step, you know, there are different roles doing similar stuff. Now it's different roles doing different similar stuff still, but shared differently or focusing on slightly different angles or sharing those responsibilities in a different light. Let me have a sip. I see a few comments popping in. Skipping research is still super common. Unfortunately, in my experience, I found PMs will justify that by taking over the research, at least to keep teams lean. Is happening, but it's also, yeah, it depends where, right? I've seen research organizations which are basically the ethos is to democratize research. And that's just because there is never enough designers, never enough researchers. And as such, research leaders just want to equip the teams and product managers to do their own good research. But the good research also requires a lot of time to establish education, the tools, the learnings, the repositories, the methods, you know, coach people up basically. And reality is, as Michelle says, not every PM is that skilled in that thing, because that's why people dedicate their lives to be researchers in UX, let's say. It takes so much energy. And like the PMs who choose to just do their own research and don't consider that they should hire UX researchers are plain stupid. I mean, it's like someone is going to give unless they're doing that, unless they are working 80 hours a week and the 40 hours of their work week are spent on actual PMing, which is super hard. It's hard enough as it is. And then they spend the remainder 40 hours doing user research. But then that's why you would be completely stupid to do that. And as such, my own learnings, not as a PM, as a UXer, has always been, and something I transitioned in management role has been, let's figure out how to hire people who would do that so we can all become more effective and do the jobs better, basically. And, you know, it means creating business cases, creating headcount, things of that nature, basically demand for more designers or researchers or whoever, engineers maybe even. That's also PM responsibility, but also design leaders' responsibility, because it's all shared in the end. Don't you think that with AI, the UX, UI, and product designers will combine into a new role like design engineer? Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. And that's perfect segue, which is basically the tomorrow. And it's happening already, again, as I said, with design systems and the proximity between the actual front-end engineering, design systems, and product design. Those are becoming basically same teams, and the best product designers can code already or understand enough of how to code basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It's unarguable. Like if you understand web technologies and you can, let's say, use Framer, Webflow, or WordPress, or just code it yourself, you're gonna be much ahead than anyone else, because at the minimum you're gonna know how to talk to the engineers. That always has been the case. So those skills are desirable, and I think what's likely is going to happen in the close future is that demand for design engineers is going to even increase even further. If you, let's say, would integrate in existing organizations which are super highly performant, or design systems, design maturity are super high, you're going to see that the actual front-end engineers make a lot of those product design decisions, and they always have been. Let's say the best ideas usually come from experimentation, or the best UI interaction design ideas, let's put it straight, are going to come from actual engineers pushing the boundaries and taking it a notch further. Like the worst thing is when the engineers just implement what designer says without kind of trying to push, because designers know enough, but they might not know the different web technologies or what else could be done. And as such, the things are shared, the dynamics are shifting, and that's why design engineers are going to pick up the speed. But there's obviously, a lot of negatives in here, because that means that someone is still going to need to do UX, or someone is still going to need to do product design, user research. As such, I think the logic between the shifts going to look quite similarly, where the product designers and engineers, again, budding up as a twin skill set's going to form these new structures of design engineers. Again, it's happening. If you take UX engineer roles, that has been the first signal that this is going to come. The number of the roles, though, is questionable. I'm not saying by no means, and if someone is saying, oh, everybody's going to be a design engineer, I mean, they're probably talking way too long, or like they're not thinking in terms of the time frames, because the tomorrow or the near future is definitely not going to be the case. It's just that the demand for that skill set or capability is definitely increasing, but at what pace is to be seen. And I would just be bullshitting you if I would say, oh, it's going to happen like immediately, or like this is the case. You cannot predict that. What you can predict, though, is that the UX designer is still gonna persist. Like the need for the UX design or those skill sets are still going to persist, and maybe going to be shared across the board. And especially if the design engineering is going to increase. Then, I made these blocks a bit smaller so you kind of understand the severity in my mind of how it could work. But I think the biggest blocks in the end, or in the near future, are going to be the design engineers or front-end engineers or UX engineers, or however, like the prototypers, someone who's a hardcore UXer and someone who's a hardcore product manager. And I'm going to, of course, dive a bit deeper than that. Let me see what is the chat saying. What do you think about the rise of service design in UX and how important it is to the age of AI? It is very important, but again, the demand for it is very small. Like every product to me is a service, but that's just my take. I know that the market is not really, like a lot of the people in the market or companies are not looking at it the same way. The bigger the company, the more product it has, the more demand, the more need for good service design does it need, because that's where like you have so many different systems which intertwine and interlink, and they require so much attention that you do need service design on a lot of different levels: API, technical, customer experience, marketing, things of that nature. Someone has to tie it all in together. It's a very strategic role, and it's often done not by UXers as well. Or it could be like, again, shared disciplines. I wouldn't be confident saying that service design is going to be the next big thing. Service design has always been a big thing, but in a very small amount. Whereas UX designer, product designer, user researcher is also like, if you want me to be even more precise, I think design engineers in the beginning or even now gonna be big thing in small amounts, but slowly probably gonna take over, because you're still gonna need more doers than managers. And service design in reality is a super strategic manager. It's not really a doer. It's more of a thinker. Even if you're gonna tell me, hey, no, I'm designing these massive service design blueprints, and I'm redefining these services, and connecting so many products all together and so many different angles and layers and abstraction layers and stuff. You would be right, but it's still super strategic rather than tactical. And I think the need for tactical elements is still persisting. I found that a lot of organizations will take the engineers to create mock-ups, designs that are already interactive, and then the UX designers come in and test, fix the interactions. Yeah, that's also true. I think it has always been a case too, which is like, if you reflect on it, like there's always going to be companies who are less on a design maturity state, but maybe it's my own ethos, but I think it's, again, design leadership issue, like where you have to basically, someone has to be the person who makes that change and redefines it. It, of course, is not just dependent on external people saying, oh, I could join this company and make the change. No, they have to report to the right people. They have to, be in the right place in the right time, have enough gravitas, have a lot of other angles basically to make these changes. But I don't see it changing as well, because, again, we are getting new businesses growing. People don't stay long enough in the roles, and I've been guilty of that too myself, where, to see like a lot of that long-term change to happen and things of that nature, or even grow make that sacrifice and grow and make the change in the organization, or risk their own well-being, their own performance, and try to make the change, like a lot of different angles. Like, what do you think about UX for VR? No thoughts whatsoever. Just UX, basically. It doesn't matter what channel you apply it. I mean, same principles. Like, principles obviously skew slightly based on the actual human and computer interaction. But the more better question would be, what do you think about the human computer interaction with the VR, let's say, channels? Because then you're going to be like, okay, it's a richer kind of angle where you're going to consider, the patterns you use, the immersion in 3D, the engagement, the feedback, all those different UX principles or heuristics then have to slightly bend, basically, because there is another layer of abstractive kind of perspectives you need to consider. It's not just like 2D interaction. But good question, Phil. It's a big topic. Maybe I'm gonna need to unpack that in one of the live streams or videos later on. This live stream gonna be highly accurate discussion on the future of UX design. Let's see what's in the store. Good add-on, but this live stream is more about the actual roles and how we're shifting. If you want to see about future of UX, make sure to check my other live streams. They're much better probably for that specifically, of like, zooming out and projecting of what could happen from a futures thinking perspective. Can you suggest some future roles, titles for UX in the AI era? Yes. And I did suggest already in, I think, AI or design for AI automation live stream I did back in the day. But on that note, Adriana, you're again on point with the segues. So ultimately, if we zoom out, basically, so if tomorrow we have a lot of design engineers and some product designers, some user researchers, we still have someone who does UX design, some engineering, some product management. I see that a lot of those roles still gonna fall into these bigger buckets. And when I say the future, this is far future. This is basically either full or partially full automation, which means that the human involvement is minimal. It means that AI models can teach other AI models and shape other AI models. Or AI model like ChatGPT would be able to write code for another AI model and publish it. So means basically closer to the AGI. In that case, the design engineers are going to be quite irrelevant in a way, because someone who's going to be in this seat of the control, going to be able to use basically automation, mechanical Turks, for a lack of better term, which are going to basically be modeling the models, and AI is going to be making itself with the input of the humans. So the human would bring a human need, and they're going to basically be creating different models. As such, the design engineers, product designer, user researchers are going to be consumed with that automated production, and this is very long term. This is saying like 20 years in advance, basically. Therefore, those actors, those roles are just going to be vanishing. Again, time frame here could be anything, but it's, you know, it's inevitable, basically. At some point in the next, again, 10, 20 years, that's going to be the case. The actual AI title or the role, which is going to definitely come into place, and I'm not going to take and say that this is exactly how it's going to be sounding or the label is going to persist, is going to be something like human experience manager. Maybe there's going to be a better marketing slogan, which is just, you know, rolls off the tongue easier, but human experience manager is going to be that person who literally engages with the automated production model or AI counterpart and telling them what the needs are of a person. If you even would go further than that, then you wouldn't even need the human experience manager, because the AI would be able to capture it through a lot of different other bits, the signals. And let's say, imagine in a far future, again, we're going to go off piste here as a little bit, but imagine if there is a model which every other person uses. Let's say, I don't know, like it's a future Apple device, right? And the Apple iPhone has some sort of app which tracks health data or something along those lines. If they're smart enough, they're already considering to implement the models which could track the A/B data, A/B test data. They would roll out A/B tests. They would basically track a lot of those data signals and the behavioral data, exactly what the people do, and learn from it. And you know, use the actual heavy processing and AI models to learn from it and shape it. And as such, the actual product or the experience could adapt by the model itself. It's not going to even need a human counterpart, because there is already a petri dish which exists. And if you put enough signals and the models are free to shape themselves, the humans are out of the pictures. The humans are only going to be served. The only thing is the quality, but quality also could be improved and locked in through enough generations. So 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years, Apple could be run by AI with no people involved. Again, corresponding to market signals, financial data, the CEO, COO, financials, every other role completed through a lot of different bits. And of course, it's going to take a while to set it up. But this is the long-term kind of notion and view. If we pull back to, again, design engineers, those are the people who are training right now the models. Let's say on the Design Squad community, the other day I saw the opening, and why the other day is like last month or so. But the opening was, we're seeking product designers, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was in terms of we're seeking product designers to design stuff on Figma. We're going to track what we do and in part train the AI models of what decisions they make. And we're going to basically say, okay, this designer did this, that. You know, you can capture enough signals and then train those models. So it's already happening. And us investing heavily in combining the product design, UI design, or design systems with engineering, we also, it might sound like it's growing in terms of a demand and the roles, and we're going to need more people to do it. It's not the case. If anything, we're going to need less people basically to focus. That's why the combined design engineer role and the role of a person who can produce good enough code, a good enough output with some heuristical UX thinking or some understanding, or just knows enough patterns to combine them is a clear signal of what's basically coming. But as you consolidate those things, you create these champions, and I know this is a philosophical note, but you create these champions who basically are perfect, seedlings for AI. They're the ones whose decision is going to be captured the most, and then, the models are going to be trained up. So that's very bird's eye view of how it can morph basically across the board. I think the most important thing to follow up on that is for everyone to take a look at this live stream, which is basically the roadmap to complete UX automation and AI UX. And this is where I outline basically of when and what sort of AI you can expect and across what type of time frame, roughly speaking. So the roadmap automation itself, the automation roadmap, could look like a very simple, progressive, step-by-step, basically, timeline of us going from completely manual, again, to completely automated. And as such, our actual, responsibilities, the needs for people, what organizations are going to do, be it, you're going to be, again, human experience engineer or human experience designer or a design engineer. It's all going to be peppered in across these type of blocks because they're principal level, basically, steps we need to take. Do watch that live stream, though, because I go into a lot of detail. But just to cover some of the things, there is this, we're at a state where we're shifting between a lot of unstructured data, a lot of a data representation on the UI, which has been the case until now, until we hit the generative AI. So let's say the generative AI tools like ChatGPT kind of came into place here, basically, where we transitioned between assistive AI and just hard-coded, backend, ultimately, the databases. So we just kind of started to scratch the surface of what assistive AI with LLMs could do. But there's other things. LLMs is just like the start of the things, They still are good at representing the data, but there is no a deeper thinking, and it might look very to some uncanny or to some very shocking of what results you can get. But those results are still just basically a predictive search. There's just a big mass of signals and a big mass of information trained up, which basically tries to, select the next most likely output or an outcome and then present it to you. So then you get your mind blown. If you don't know how it works, or if you know how it works, it becomes almost like, yeah, we need a bit more because, you're going to reach the ceiling really high, really quick, Now, my take has been that we need to basically, think bigger. And that comes with the decision support specifically. And for good decision support to happen, you need to free up your AI models to basically, again, train itself or modify itself. This is almost like inevitable as well progression, because if you do that, then from the assistive AI, you can then transition to more autonomous AI, which is the experiences where your users are going to be able to, they don't really even have to interact much with the AI, or if they do, they're going to interact with another human being or a person, assistant, ultimately, of theirs. But smart assistant, not just one where you talk to to some sort of chat and then it gives you some results. No, someone who can action stuff for you. And then as such, if you've seen me as well down below, I don't know if the screen crops it off or not, like, you know, it's been heavy UX contribution and specialist roles. This is where you had, again, UI designers, product designers, design engineers coming in. But once we reach the actual decision support at the max state, that's where you're gonna have to have a cutoff between the design engineers. Of course, the long tail of it is going to be very long, because just like we still see openings for maybe UX architect is not the right one, but up until I think pandemic, you still could see UX architect roles. So that was one of the last things of that long tail for UX architecture, because it got consumed by other things. Same thing is going to happen with design engineering, prototyping, product design, UI design, you name it. As we progress, we automate things. Like, you are not going to need those roles anymore, or we're going to need to take different shape. And that shape is going to be that producer, manager, human experience person who's actually going to look at what needs they need to translate, how they're going to train the AI model to train itself. They're going to coach, guide, provide some sort of guardrails, just like you would when you grow a tree in a garden, or you coach a person who just joined your team and they're very junior. That's the interaction you can expect. Imagine if you are a manager of UX, you're just one person, you just got hired a junior, but now you have to manage them without doing IC work. That's the interaction I can, see happening immediately after we get out of a data presentation layer and go into decision support, because you're going to need to then use AI as a junior UX, IC designer or prototyper or maker end-to-end to make those experiences. And the interaction is going to be very different. Therefore, I'm saying that it's going to be human experience, producer, manager, whatever it's called, but it should give you a bit of a thought of like what it could look like, I hope. I hope I'm not losing anyone. Do let me know in the comments of your own thoughts. Now, after that, though, after we go from the assistive AI, as you can see the roles, again, there's going to be a lot of long tails here. But autonomous AI means ChatGPT is nothing. It's a drop. We're talking now about the ocean, basically. Autonomous AI means that there's going to be at first conditional automation where you're going to need your human experience producer or manager or you to work with it and coach it and define the conditions for it, basically correct it a lot. Gonna need to figure out how to design the interaction itself between the UXers and the actual AI. Then we're going to go into high automation, which is basically then taking you out of the picture, and then the full automation. And this is where the things get very hazy and very vague. And that's where I want to leave it, because I have no idea. But the actual progression is definitely going to look like this. I think in the, yes, this is a good one. I'm borrowing from the last live stream, by the way. So do take a look, as I'm obviously going to give much more there, because it was all focused on that. But I was basically even putting the different time frames, 2023, which was that live stream done, and then 2030, where we reach the conditional automation. So it's really just another 5 to 6 years until then. And I talk about different epochs, basically from early web to isolated experimentation epoch, to anyone's a designer epoch, to then anyone's product maker epoch, which that is kind of ending on that and describing exactly what that interaction could look like. But this is almost besides the design engineering being. So let me just recover really quickly, take a sip, see what you chat about. For someone who works UX designer and design systems, what do you think are most of the areas to look out for in the future? So just kind of summarizing what I said, I think someone who's already working with the design systems likely going to need to learn a lot of that production skills, because it's going to become much more easier for you to produce the experiences. Like in effect, if you work on Figma design system and it has some sort of code base or components in code on Storybook or other ways to capture it. You have some documentation naturally. You have some contribution modeling, the governance of a design system. Let me put a big camera. Then you're already producing the data, the raw signals for someone to, in the future, automate it for you. So if you're an Acme Corp today and you're working on the design systems, in the next few years, maybe next year even, I don't know when, there's going to be new tools, new AI for design systems, new AI for front-end experiences and how it's developed. And it's going to take all that information you work to date and use it. It really would take one startup today to just make it their lifelong goal, but not that big of a life, obviously, but just to spend a few years saying, all we have to do is create AI model, which would take the Figma files, the documentation, the governance models, the Slack messages about how to use those patterns, the design revision history from Figma, all the different signals, structured, unstructured, sentimental or not, doesn't matter. Crunch that in a model and say, this is what we need to do next, or this is what data states next, or this is the actual behavioral data from analytics perspective, from A/B tests, and spit you out everything, because everything is already code anyways, which you design. So if you plug just a bit smarter model into it, you can figure out the ways. And as such, the next step, immediate step, it would be for someone to, again, likely become a bit more of a design engineer, but not in terms that you're just gonna learn front-end development and that's it. No, you're just gonna become more strategic in terms of how you approach gluing the design and engineering together and being that, likely in the beginning just a linchpin, but in the end, someone who's maybe managing the capability. Maybe you're going to become that manager of both design and engineering in a front-end sense, and then shaping how the future technology, the generative AI or AI models could be basically overlaid and automated for that company or companies across the board. So that's how you could kind of bring the new perspective in. Is UX a good career choice in 2024? I can't answer that for you. You need to know. If you're here, I think you want it. So probably, yeah. Having background in FE, front-end engineering, I'm uncertain about the appropriate job title for my desired roles in UX UI design. Currently, I'm marketing myself as user-centered designer. Is that a good one? Adriana, I would kind of be have an honest reflection. And this is just like a simple advice, but you need to project what title you want to have, but more so not necessarily the title, but the type of work you want to do, and literally list out, if you want a very tactical advice, list out what you want to do in your role in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever time frame you're going to take. Try to take even longer term title, or not title, sorry, but basically disciplines or skills, and list them out, what type of work you want to do and what type of work you don't want to do, and see where it fits. The titles, or you putting a label on your portfolio, I'm a UX engineer, I'm a UX designer, I'm a product designer, I'm user researcher, matter enough for the application specifically on a micro level. On a macro level, it matters none at all. You can call yourself whatever you want it. You could call yourself a human experience connoisseur, or something, or a maestro. It would probably induce some cringe in a hiring manager perspective, but maybe you're going to convince them with your case studies. But that's how little it matters. It's what matters is your work and work you want to do, and the skills you want to shape up. So I wouldn't overthink it. Granted, you have front-end engineering skills, superb. You like design systems already, you stated, and you like the UX, and maybe you can hammer those things. Just keep on hammering, basically. Keep on doing and see where it fits. Because again, the market is going to shape up. And obviously there's UX engineering roles, but there are not that many. It's kind of like service design, which we talked about before. There is a big value we bring, but we're not that many people. So I wouldn't kind of drop the stuff you have already to jump on something else. Like, your career progression has to be incremental and build upon the skills you already have, because you have a lot of skills. So keep at it, but define what you want your work to look at. Like, do you want to manage teams? That's one of the questions I would ask. Do you want to be actual maker and code stuff? That's another thing. And it doesn't mean you're going to do it forever, but at some point, some AI is going to do it for you. But do you want to be involved in that? Like, answer those questions basically yes or no, and be very brutal about it. No maybes. And then you're going to know exactly what your role could look like. Read the job ads, connect with the hiring managers to understand if that's a role you want to have, and then the rest is, history. I think the cautionary tale, or maybe not at all actually, I think a lot of people fear that their next role, they have to get it right, and the title has to be right enough, because we're not going to get promoted next. That's total BS. Like, doesn't matter what's your title now, what your role is next. What matters in your resume, and when you get the next job and the next job, is what you did in that role. That's what you need to focus on. And again, reflect and focus on what you're doing and what you want to do. Let's say, I can give you an example. I was interviewing with Meta back in the day, like years ago, with a superb recruiter, by the way. And the recruiter was very friendly and was obviously very keen to get me in. And at the time, my actual official title was a manager. Like a UX manager. But I did everything. I did, in the beginning of the role, I did product design as a lead. I did service design, user research, strategy, shape design, organization, design operations, you name it. Like, literally everything you could do in design from leadership or IC perspective was done. And that encaptured years of actual experience. And they were taken aback because I was talking about managing, at that point, I was managing 21 people. And I said, I managed that many. And they were like, what? Like, a manager shouldn't manage that many people. Like, this is like a head of responsibility or some like senior director responsibility. And I was just explaining like, yeah, but it doesn't matter what the title says. It matters what I actually did in the role. And therefore there was like a immediate fit with that person. Like, we understood that. But it took a dialogue. It doesn't mean that I couldn't rebrand myself or say on the resume that I just did senior UX leadership, instead of saying my title was UX manager. Who the hell cares about titles? It's really what you achieved, what you did in that role. So think about it that way. And my personal lesson has been like a really good one for myself, at least. And that's what I would want to share with you too. Don't limit yourself. Don't make it self-limiting ultimately in roles or capabilities or what you do. It just, focus on what you want to do, what you're doing, capture it, and then you can market it whatever you want. The worst comes to worst, you can, in the interviews or recruiter calls or approaches, resumes, you can say, acted as, bam, acted as, I don't even want to say what, like head of UX, acted as design engineer, acted as UX engineer, acted as senior product designer, even if your role was mid product designer, acted as senior. Like, basically, if you're doing something, you need to tell that you're doing something. And if you're doing at a X level or X capability, X skill set, say it. That's about it. That's how you get externally promoted if you jump to different companies, or, if you cannot get promoted internally. And a lot of that stuff as well. Let me just quickly take a sip. I agree, UX is about defining a problem and researching a solution. The tools and titles will change and become progressively more technical, but at the end of the day, it's still problem and solution. Yeah, at the principal level, it's definitely that. That Philmon is spot on that. Are you watching Manchester United later? I guess nope. Not my cup of tea, but enjoy it if you do. ChatGPT suggested for problem solution roles, problem solving UX designer or solutions focused UX designer. ChatGPT is drunk. And I don't know about you, but I'm really disappointed about ChatGPT and the stuff it lately spits out. And also because if you gain a perspective of how it actually works and what data it's trained and stuff, it's like, one, it gives you, it's becoming like the quality is dropping by the day, at least in my case. And two, it's like it gives you this type of fluff. It's basically a mouthful. It's created to create as much information as possible, which likely gonna land and be relevant to you. And this is really the case. Problem solving UX designer, hell, like it's probably got trained on hundreds of UX portfolios with titles problem solver, UX designer, you know, something along those lines, connecting those multiple titles together and giving you this blurb of nonsense. That's about it. You cannot go wrong with human experience, but I'm very biased. You know, I'm a human experience designer. That's about it. You know, I'm experience designer and that's about it. Like you cannot take anything away from it, or you shouldn't even add, like, let's not overcomplicate anything to that. The issue is about how to get the job in the shark mode job marketing. I'm a shark in FE, but I wouldn't like to code anymore. But I cannot find how to be shark in UX job tank. Well, again, it depends what you want to do, the type of work you want to do. If you want to do UX engineering work, it would be easier for you to go into UX like that. But there's not also many openings in that. There's more openings for people, you know, especially, I mean, the only, I guess, a spanner in the works here is that there's not that many junior roles anymore either, you know, so you're a bit kind of boxed in. But still, like, zoom out from all those limits and think what stuff you want to do and you know, pursue that. It's no shame to go back to like the basics and redefine your career or change it completely. Would it be possible to review on my product design portfolio? Arshdeep, yes, but also be, you know, cognizant that I have very little time. That's why I'm running Livestream instead of, you know, talking about, you know, instead of just kind of focusing on somewhere else. It's kind of like it's easier for me to add value to more people if I can just do it in one go. Arshdeep, join the Design Squad community on Discord. That's where it's happening. If it's not me, someone else is going to review it for you, but also you have to commit to review the portfolios of other people. That's where magic happens. It's basically adding value to others so that people reciprocate. If you tag me in Design Squad community, I always reply. People don't do that enough. Don't send me a DM, by the way. But if you have a specific problem, you know, I might be harsh sometimes. I might be saying, be more specific or tell me more context, you know, like being snappy in just a few words. But that's just because I can only help you if you try for me to help you or help me to help you, basically. So add me on Design Squad community on one of the channels, relevant one, please. And then let's see where it takes us. Is it too late to get into UX, web design as AI automated? Nah, it's not too late. Especially because your work is going to be changing. So if you get to it now, you're going to start using AI tools. Then the web design you do with AI tools is going to look differently than if you would have gone into UX 2 years or 5 years ago. So what? It's still a journey. You're still going to start from somewhere. Some people start from nothing, some from somewhere, but you know, it's not going to be from scratch. And if you really want to, you can get it. And I'm not going to be discouraging. Like, I'm not the person who would kind of gatekeep or say, don't get into UX design. I get why people say this, but I think we need more. We need more designers and engineers. We need more, basically, makers at a principal level. I couldn't agree more. Every project worked on needs to produce a great portfolio piece. Pixar in the early days focused on quality products that had a shelf life of forever. Sells on every platform. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's also, I mean, you know, what goes through my mind too is that as UX designers, I mean, there's a big lesson too here is kind of like, even if the content I produce on this channel, let's take non-UX example, I always tried to make content which would be more green, basically would be, I guess, evergreen would be the right term, which means that if you find it in 2 years, it still would be relevant to you. I didn't want to chase the trends, and of course some videos are like that, but I didn't want to, even if they perform better immediately, it doesn't really matter. Like, it always seemed like we can save a lot of time, but focusing on fundamentals and principle level issues and problems and stuff, and that's what I tried to focus the most. Same applies to UX projects and portfolios and things of that nature. Try to now, let's say, if you want to be relevant in UX, learn new things, but also take projects which are going to be representative of the work you want to do. So Adriana, if you're still here on a stream, I know you're conflicted and you have a lot of going through your mind. If you define what the type of work you want to do, the type of projects you want to do, that's the type of projects you should be doing on your own, in your own leisure, as case studies. Because everything you have in your portfolio should be tailored to show what you want to do next. It shouldn't just show what you're doing now. That's the key distinction and key mistake that people make. They think that if they're going to add this case study from 10 years ago, it's still relevant. It could be on a fundamental level, on architecture level, skill sets, UX methodology, stuff like that. But think of what's next. Like, what could it be? It's probably emerging tech, generative AI, mixed reality, different flavors of it, VR, AR, MX, you name it, whatever, keywords. Like, basically looking ahead and then making that project, then working, doing research into those channels, into those methods, basically working with that. If I would be a junior or a senior right now, some of the projects I would definitely focus on, and granted, you still need to do your research, so don't just pick, a channel and just run with it. But I would definitely look into spatial experiences. That would be one. And that's because Apple is grounding it. I know it's hot shit right now and everyone's losing their minds and it's in a crappy state. Doesn't matter if you're a design engineer, a researcher, or product designer. I would do something to do with that. And that's because it's still going to persist and it's going to get better and better. And companies going to catch up. We're going to need to create apps for it. I hate the ecosystem. I hate all the emerging tech like humane AI, which stuff we discussed with Kevin on our podcast yesterday, by the way. And our podcast is going to come in the next few days or next couple of weeks. But we discussed about how crap those things are, Rapid R1, and all those different devices of combining generative AI and gestures and stuff. And Kevin's perspective, and maybe Kevin is still on a stream, was that you don't need to be skilled designer to understand why it's total garbage. Like, from interaction perspective, from UX fundamentals, factors, there's just so many problems with those things. But they are the starting ecosystem. They're like Windows XT, I don't know, like Xerox, one of those old OSs which inspired Apple and Next PC and their GUI, the graphical user interface development. Like, they're at that stage basically. So imagine having a case study of you designing something for like one of the oldest GUI interactive operating systems, where you already had a mouse cursor and icons and things of that nature. That's evergreen case study. And that's where long story short, where the value is. If you think you have too many projects under NDA, or if you think your portfolio is not glowing, do a self-directed work and just do it yourself, basically. Make that project happen. Pick a channel, do deep research, come back to the channel, drop the channel, do more research until you figure out what the users need. Then see if there's maybe any alternatives and then create something for it. Maybe it's a research case study, maybe it's actual product design, interactive design effort. An app, may I say, even that, and then go for it. And I'm getting a lot of comments, by the way. If I if I'm missing something, I know I missed the other live streams. I always miss because sometimes you just lose. Like I saw some comments which were saying, oh, I got a job and stuff because of, you know, the tips and stuff they got from live stream, and I totally missed, and my wife was the one pointing out. So forgive me if I don't see it, because it's hard to keep up, but I do appreciate everyone's contribution, because, you know, it goes two ways at that. Let me see, what else could I take? I'm just gonna take it off the bottom of the list. I'm an entry-level designer and want to work in car industry. Do you know where I can learn more about designing interfaces for cars? Thank you. You know what I would do, Dima? This is a really good thing. Where you want to design, because I'm going to give you a glimpse, because I worked in automotive industry just a few years ago, and it's been almost like a consulting augmentation gig. A lot of that UX, like every car company has UX designers now, but a lot of that responsibility, just like in a gaming industry, there is game producers and game designers, are being done by industrial designers who have enough understanding of hardware UX and product design, you know, from industrial perspective. And they also try to chip at the actual interfaces. As such, step number one, what I would do if I would be in your shoes and I would want to work there, again, projects, make a project, redesign something. You can literally go on my channel, and Design Challenges playlist has Tesla UX challenge. And there, in that challenge, in that video, I walk through and also share a Miro board with specific screens on Tesla. So you have no excuse, Dima. You can literally take those screens and make a redesign. You can literally take the video responses and contributions from other members and use that research and create a bloody great project and case study. No excuses there. That's step number one. Go find those videos, watch it. Even like Kevin from our Design Squad community, Champ, he recorded him using the screen and problems, and he did review just for those challenges. So you also have a background research. You also have the user's input on that. Raw material is there for you. Take that, crunch it, make a project, make a case study. Step like this is what's gonna get you invited in the actual interview, because people are gonna want to talk to you because you made an effort to work on that thing. And that's what I'm talking about. Define the work you want to do, or what type of work, and then make an effort of how to prove that you can do that work. And this is step number one. Step number two, and again, make a list and make sure you take each step instead of picking and choosing. This is not pick and mix. Go on LinkedIn and research or search for people in this industrial design, or specifically the companies which you would want to work for, or all automotive companies, especially budding up, and look for people with titles as design leader, industrial designer, senior industrial designer, design engineer as well. Basically look for roles which are already doing some of that stuff you want to do, and maybe even UXers, and contact them, connect with them, follow them, contribute to their comments. Basically position them as your virtual mentor. You don't have to ask for them to coach you or mentor you. Position them as your mentor so that they can give you some advice, and you can learn from them by osmosis through their social media presence, or maybe even have pointed questions saying, hey, I have this issue. Can you help me out? Or what should I do if you're stuck? That's number two. So you actually can learn something, or even get advice on step number one if you actually make that project. Step number three, Discord. When I worked with automotive, I literally went on Discord, on Reddit, on a lot of other platforms, and followed and joined every community on automotive industrial design and automotive design. There's plenty. Like, you can find it. If you cannot find it, like, immediately automotive, go to industrial design groups. Go to groups which are dedicated for the specific brand of automotive. Do your research. You can find those pockets of people who hang out somewhere and discuss those things. Join in, contribute, ask stupid questions, contribute to stupid responses or smart responses. 3-step framework. And this is your basically ramp up into automotive industry. Hope that helps, but do this. This is like, a no-brainer. Next one. Super. That's what I'm trying to focus on. Case study on the subject to be what I like, my interest and experience, because in the end, I like what I'm learning and work. I love your channel. Awesome. I mean, it sounds like you have a bit of closure, but, reflect. Do that kind of self-work, that background work. In the brief, there was a lot of ambiguity. I followed up trying to get a clear picture from the hiring manager. My question is, as a hiring manager, what do you look for in a challenge, the process, or tough one? Depends what sort of challenge. Again, it sounds like you took the take-home assignment and you're doing some design work. So number one would be, whatever you do, make sure that you do so it's appropriate of the role. If you really want to do it, it sounds like you committed to do it. Like I would question that too. And I, would be like, should you even do it? But as per my video where I covered the take home assignments, like you should only do it for the roles you would die for. That's where you don't mind going extra mile. That you wouldn't even mind if they reject you in the end. That's where you should do the take home assignment. A lot of the recruiters now are even used to being shut down and rejected. Like I now reject every single one, or used to even reject for AC roles. And that's because it's free labor. It usually is a throwaway. So whatever you do, make sure that it's relevant to your role and approach it from that regard. If it's vague, but it's a super strategic role or a senior role, do what the senior would do and do enough to cover it as a senior. Capture the questions, capture the gaps, capture the assumptions and state it like so. Say that I made an assumption because I would want to in real life know what X is. Literally say that. Say that I made a lot of hypotheses because I didn't know X, Y, Z, and and take it from there basically. So you can do a lot of that, but again, position in your mind so it's relevant to the role. If someone asks you to do mock-ups or redesign something and you think that this is appropriate of the role and you're going to do those redesign, well, and you really want it and you would die for that role, then do it, and still capture the gaps, the questions, show some self-awareness. If hiring manager is not giving you more detail or not being specific enough and it's still vague, show self-awareness and say, hey, this was very vague, but I made these assumptions because of X, Y, Z. This is what I know so far. This is what I would need to know to be effective in actual project, in actual role, and just be upfront of that. And that's about it, Also, don't get overwhelmed because I know where you're standing. You probably are like, oh, it's vague, so I have no idea where to start even. Start. That's about it. It's just like with a project. If the hardest UX challenges, it doesn't have to be take-home exercise. You're always going to face so much uncertainty. You have to start. Start with asking better questions, with more research, background research, looking at the things of that nature. In one of the I was interviewing with ASOS or ASOS in UK, which is a big brand for e-commerce back in the day. And they gave me a take-home exercise, but I didn't mind doing it because I really wanted to join them. I didn't join them, obviously, but just to self-reflect, I'm giving all the credit because they're such a friendly people. I chose different alternative, basically different place, and opted out from the process afterwards. But one of the take-home exercise was literally they gave me a specific flow and said, we want to improve this because it doesn't give us enough conversions or something like that. And I immediately was overwhelmed and I didn't know what to do. So I remember I went on their app store because it was specifically Android, I think, or maybe iOS, I can't recall now. I went on App Store, read reviews, and I pulled out screenshots. I went on Reddit, pulled out screenshots. I talked to my wife, even it's n=1, and she was a user, and I talked to her. She didn't even use that feature anyways. I talked why she wouldn't use it, and I literally captured that, and I was very honest in my write-up, in my Miro board I created to present that these are the things I did and why, and I know it's not enough, I know I would do more, but hey, this is an exercise and I'm talking, it's my thinking what matters. I made a new flow as well with some suggestions from a heuristics perspective and stuff like that. And now that and the interesting bit was there, which I think was a good one, because I didn't take myself too serious as a designer. I remember it was to do something with like camera capture and ability to identify the colors, or a bit of a computer vision, something along those lines. And I remember taking a photo with an app, because I was literally live testing, of my cat, which was black. And I remember ASOS app gave us suggestions of a dress, which was black, something else, which was black, like ridiculous. And I literally took that screenshot and said, this is yet another use case. And this is the result. Basically, was spinning it up, taking it seriously, not so seriously, but, you know, giving a bit more humor as well, adding to it. You don't have to do that, but I'm just giving you an example that I took it serious enough because I wanted it, and I approached it in a way which is very self-aware of like how you approach it and the limits, the hypotheses, the things of that nature, if that helps you. Cool. All right. So we dove in a lot of different things. I want to finish off the stream with a few bits because we are running. Damn, the time does fly. If you want more of live streams, and if you enjoy it, if it's helpful, I'm really happy to do more of these. And there's so many topics, you know, to do. I've obviously, don't jump off. I still have something to show. And this is this thing, which I'm not gonna zoom in just yet. But appreciate for everyone's contribution. If you do enjoy, you know, after this live stream completes, have a think and add me on Discord, or leave a comment with what else you would want to cover. It could be burning issue, it could be something else. I'm happy to help you out, happy to talk about it at the minimum, because I'm, you know, I'm not no expert in everything. I do have my expertise in certain things. I do have my bold ideas and crazy ideas and things of that nature, but often it helps to get an additional perspective. And that's what I'm trying to share with you. So do leave a comment of what else you would want me to cover. And I'm happy to schedule in another session at some point, you know, in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, few weeks. Happy to do that. One thing which I want to finish up with on the design engineers and other roles perspective is this tweet I made in 2022. And this is going to be always relevant, by the way. The summary of it is, also ignore that this is about the actual UX tool or the next UX tool. It's really not about this. It's more stating that the abstraction layers, or us abstracting the code with design, like, it's a bit ridiculous for anyone to design in Figma, which was coded for you to draw something, and that code now could be transported into a different code someone is going to write in their code editor. Like, there are too many steps basically in the flow from the design, from the environment where you design, from the ideas to another environment where an engineer would write up and code something up. And this is the key driver, especially when the times got worse. That's where those bubbles between design and engineering, I don't know if you can see it, like, yeah, okay, I see where my hands are now. Like, they basically start to overlap. you get this, Venn diagram where you have the need for design engineers to come in between those overlaps. This is why we are wasting a lot of steps, and obsession with being very pragmatic, operational, and delivering results and doing it so cheap is exactly what businesses want. And it's going to persist as well because, again, just like the vanishing designer is stating, we're basically spinning off and fumbling down, and that snowball increasing, like the debt increases. Every decision we make makes either better stuff for UX people, better processes, maturity, things of ideas of other disciplines of how UX is viewed. The snowball is snowballing. It's becoming bigger and bigger. So we either can chip whilst doing that snowball, while it's snowballing, and adding different layers or adding different spins or different patterns or whatever you want to kind of picture it as a metaphor, or we can kind of reflect like, why is this happening, and like, why do we get a demand for design engineers to begin with? And this is like my take. Like the tools like Figma are very wasteful, and I know they know this. They're already investing in dev tools, things of that nature, bridging the gap between the actual design, production, and ideation, and the actual implementation. Those then bubbles are going to be venning even more. They're going to be overlapping even more exactly for this reason. And that's why, again, you can look on my Twitter, by the way, follow me, VA_experience. And there is a thread basically explaining exactly what the problem is and has been for all the time. That's why, as we go through these automation steps, like that UX role is going to become more and more either super technical and IC of the actual designer being able to churn and produce stuff, because it's going to be much easier with AI tooling maturing too, and eventually transitioning into the human experience producer or manager where that is no longer needed. So the objective number one for any designer or front-end engineer or something just to keep in mind, like almost like a North Star, which is going to guide you regardless because you're in that snowball, is that, the abstraction layers and like you designing it in boxes, which is already coded, and it has code underlying running in Figma, and it could be training models and doing all that good stuff, and could be making changes, and someone else coding it in a separate environment, and then comparing the thing. Just that loop is going to break apart. It's not going to exist anymore. And it's almost like this epoch of isolated experiments, the delightful pixel pushing, efficient broken design process, and structured data mess is going to like basically be disappearing. I know that Figma, or at least maybe Dylan Field, I hope, is aware of this. And we're, again, trying to add these things, but eventually whatever you design in Figma is going to be that stepping stone, which is going to immediately launch the products into the production, or, soon enough. And eventually you're not going to even need to do it in Figma. You can just describe it, and it's going to give you that output. If you want more about this or more thinking about this, do check my live stream, which is that UX roadmap to complete UX automation. That explains a lot of that stuff and those ideas, and I hope that's been useful. That's about it. We're almost 1 hour 23 in. That's time did flew by. I appreciate every one of you tuning in, commenting, contributing to the discussion. Really good questions. Thank you everyone for participating, and do leave a comment after this is done so I know what you want me to cover next. I might even come back or do a follow-up, just like I did with this sequence of, vanishing designer, then also tagged and covered some of that automation stuff, and then also covered the morphing roles and the timeline and the thinking behind it. But I hope it helped. Hope it's informative. Have a great weekend, and on that note, I'm out.